Number 10. Nightmare in a Cage. Off the coast of New Zealand, a nightmare unfolded when a great white shark attacked a cage diver. As part of a Shark Week special, divers descended into the shark-infested waters of Stewart Island in 2013, hoping to get some footage of the most terrifying ocean predator. And they definitely got all the footage they could ever need. Inside the cage was a lonely diver, a thrill seeker who wanted to see the inside of a shark's mouth as it tried to take a bite out of him. What the thrill seeker didn't realize was just how scary it would be. The 18-foot, 5.4-meter monster great white swam straight at his measly steel cage and chomped down on the bar. The diver's friend, who was watching him from the boat above, began screaming, "Get him out of there!" Owner and operator of Shark Dive NZ, Peter Scott, recognized the shark as a local legend named Slash. He's been terrorizing the waters around Stewart Island for years and is not a shark anyone dares to mess with. The diver was promptly pulled up and out of the shark's reach. Although he didn't suffer any injuries, it was a sobering experience. What's really freaky is that in the last few years, shark attacks have been steadily climbing. Ever since shark diving in New Zealand became popular, more and more people are being attacked by sharks. Some locals believe that dangling tourists in cages like bait to lure sharks is causing them to act more aggressive. Go figure. Number 9. Trauma Down Under. On January 5, 2020, the wife of an Australian diver watched her husband be killed by a great white. It happened off the coast of Esperance, and the victim's name was Gary Johnson. Gary was killed while diving with his wife Karen Milligan near Carl Island. Gary had been in the water for no more than 3 minutes when the shark attacked him unprovoked. His wife was about 10 feet, 3 meters away from him. The water was a little murky, and she momentarily lost sight of her husband. Then she saw his legs, and suddenly the water turned red as it filled with blood. Through the haze of red mist, she saw a massive shark tail flapping. Karen tried to hit the shark with her camera, but it was too late. When the blood cleared and the visibility returned, both the shark and her husband were gone. As Karen swam toward the surface, she came across her husband's lifeless body. He was covered in blood and unresponsive, and his mask had come off. She tried to get his body onto the boat, but he was too heavy, and she eventually had no choice but to let him go. Karen watched her husband drift away into the ocean, and his body was never seen again. Researchers only found scraps of Gary's wetsuit, flippers, and diving gear. Number 8. The Australian Navy diver attack. In February of 2009, an Australian Navy diver named Paul de Gelder was diving in Sydney Harbour when he met a very grumpy bull shark. The bull shark clamped onto his arm, sawed through his squishy flesh, and ripped his limb clean off. It was a horrific attack that Paul miraculously survived. According to what Paul said in an interview, he never felt the teeth go into his arm. Because shark teeth are designed to slice with ease, there was no real cutting pain. It felt like pressure, like something really heavy was squeezing him. In reality, he had about 36 razor blades moving in opposite directions, with his arm caught between them. Then, when the shark jerked its mouth, his arm came off. Paul was being torn apart, and he was also drowning at the same time. Things really could not have been much worse. To make matters even more tragic, Paul had been minding his own business when disaster struck. He was diving in a black suit, not that far from the surface, just relaxing and enjoying the day. The shark came from below, grabbed his leg and hand at the same time, and then dragged him underwater. By the time the shark finally let him go, he was missing one arm and one leg, but he did live to dive another day. Number 7. Blood in the Red Sea. In 2018, diver Dan White was finishing up his deep diver certification in Egypt. He was about 30 feet, 9 meters underwater, near Brothers Island, with 5 other divers and 2 instructors. There were also a few Germans on vacation, diving in the same area. Dan had his camera with him down there, and he began recording a white-tip shark that got close to the group. The day before, Dan had gotten up close and personal with 3 of the same species of shark, and nothing bad had happened. But this time, as he was filming the shark, he witnessed something horrifying. The bubbles from one of the divers in his group seemed to catch the shark off guard, and suddenly it attacked. The victim diver was identified only as Ian. For whatever reason, the shark didn't like the way the bubbles came off his equipment, and it immediately went after him. One of the German divers rushed to help, and soon the two men found themselves wrestling with the beast. The German wound up with a chunk being taken out of his leg. In the film footage shot by Dan White, you can hear the scream even though they're so deep beneath the surface. There's an excruciating howl of pain, then the water suddenly boils with blood. The German victim, the brave diver who had put his own life in danger to help the first diver, nearly lost his leg. His calf was badly shredded, right through the muscle and bone. Number 6. Attack of the tiger shark. In 2019, a scuba diver was nearly killed off the coast of Fiji by a hungry shark. This was a tiger shark, about 15 feet, 4.5 meters long, and in no mood for playing games. Stephen Sim was on a shark diving trip with a couple of friends. Everyone was having a good time. They were looking at the sharks, and his friend was recording everything on his GoPro. From out of nowhere, one of the tiger sharks became aggressive. It swam directly at Stephen, opened its huge mouth, and bit down on his head. The terrifying encounter was caught on video, and it really looked like the shark was about to bite Stephen's head clean off. Luckily, Stephen was covered in diving equipment. The shark bit down on the metal oxygen tank instead of Stephen's skull. He still was left with deep lacerations in his head, but luckily for him, the metal tank took most of the damage. The dive master managed to kick the shark until it left, and as the shark fled, it somehow yanked Stephen's mask partially off. Now he was bleeding and in danger of drowning. In the end, Stephen escaped the deadly waters with his life. He did suffer injuries to his head, but things could have been so much worse. Number 5. Zombie shark. Shark photographer Ewan Rannikin captured footage of a zombie shark at Guadalupe Island, located about 125 miles, 201 kilometers, from mainland Mexico. He uploaded the unbelievable footage of the dead-eyed monster fish in 2019. Guadalupe Island is one of the best places to witness great white sharks. It's right in the migration path for several kinds of seals, making an ideal feasting zone for the apex predators. Ewan took his camera into a shark cage here, lowered some bait to draw the shark near, and filmed what happened. The shark snatched the bait right in front of Ewan's eyes, and Ewan captured something shocking on his camera. As the great white bit down on the block of chum, its eyes rolled back in its head and turned pure white, like the empty eye sockets of an undead creature. In reality, this is an unusual defense mechanism not many people know of. When great white sharks go in for the kill, they close their eyes. A kind of fleshy shield closes over their eyeballs to protect them in case their meal fights back. It looks like the shark is part of the undead, but really it's protecting itself from debris, blood, or a flailing victim. Number 4. Shark versus camera. Russell Easton was photographing a 12-foot, 3.6-meter tiger shark in the Bahamas in 2012 when he got an unexpected close-up. Russell was on the seafloor holding his gigantic camera while tiger sharks swam around him. According to what Russell said after the incident, he was looking through the viewfinder on the camera when suddenly the screen was filled with teeth. A tiger shark had opened its mouth in an attempt to swallow his camera and maybe his head. The professional photographer then had to fight the monstrous fish off with his equipment. All he had separating his fragile human skin from the shark's razor-sharp teeth was his beloved camera. He did manage to get some pretty great pictures of the inside of its mouth, but that wasn't what he had originally set out to do. Russell shoved the shark away. It appeared to lose interest, and he was able to swim to safety. It was only later that he realized how close he had come to death. Russell was adamant that the shark had not tried to kill him. Just like how dogs use their noses to investigate their world, sharks use their mouths. It was only trying to figure out what Russell and his camera were doing. There was nothing malicious about it. Nonetheless, if that camera hadn't been where it was, the shark's curiosity probably would have cost Russell his life. Number 3. Deep Sea Monster Shark. In 2020, creepy footage of a man almost being eaten by a shark appeared online. The video was shot in an unknown location. It looks like it might have been California, but no one is really sure. All we know is that the diver was at the bottom of the sea collecting abalones, a type of deep-sea mollusk. The diver was going about his work, their friend was filming, and suddenly a great big white shark appeared behind the diver's back. In the footage, the diver doesn't appear to notice he's being stalked by a shark. The thing moves quickly through the green and murky water, its mouth opens just slightly, and it looks like it's about to rip the guy's head off. At the last second, the shark changes its mind. It seems to recognize the human as something not worth spending the energy to eat, and it turns away. The diver, who at this point has figured out there's a shark behind him, remains totally still as the shark's pale belly scrapes against the top of his head. Nobody was hurt, but the experience must have been very humbling for the diver, who almost lost his head. Number 2. Monster Sharks of Guadalupe. Off the coast of Guadalupe Island, Mexico's own shark paradise, a great white shark attacked a pair of divers. It smashed through the metal cage they were hiding in, getting close enough that it could have chomped their limbs off. The horrifying encounter happened in October of 2019. A pair of thrill seekers were lowered into the water inside the metal cage together. After a bit of waiting, an 11-foot, 3.3-meter shark came swimming at them with intense speed. It slammed into the cage, slipped its head through the bars, and brandished its razor-sharp teeth. Sadly, this turned out to be a worse encounter for the shark than for the humans. As scared as the divers were, the shark was even more terrified. It had its head wedged between the bars and couldn't get out, and the divers were too scared to even try and help. Maybe they could have pushed the shark out of the cage, but they also could have had their hands bitten clean off by accident. It just wasn't worth the risk. After about 25 minutes of horror from every angle, the shark bled out through its gills and died. It started out as a terrifying experience for the divers and ended tragically. Number 1. Fishing boat of nurses. In the summer of 2019, a spear fisherman was brutally attacked by a shark in Florida. He was diving near Key Biscayne early on a Saturday morning when the unimaginable happened. The man, identified only as being 40 years old, was bitten multiple times by an unidentified species of shark. By some miracle, the shark let him go and he was able to swim back to the surface. And there, the second miracle happened. The diver was rescued by a boat full of medical professionals. He could not have been any luckier. He was savaged by a shark, then saved by a boat of vacationing nurses. Two of the nurses were Christine Haynes and Glazer Martin from San Antonio's Stone Oak Methodist Hospital. According to what the women told local news, and backed up by cell phone footage of the event, the man's arm was mangled. They asked what kind of shark bit him, but all he said was the shark was blue. The victim was incoherent and in pain, and soaked from his arm to his feet in blood. Christine Haynes said there were at least 3 different sets of bite marks in his wetsuit. Much of his skin was hanging loosely, and there were punctures in his muscle. Thankfully, the nurses had a first aid kit on board. They were able to keep the man alive while hurrying back to shore. Last we heard, the man recovered from his injuries at Jackson Memorial Hospital in Miami. Would you rather go diving in shark-infested waters or crocodile-infested waters? Let us know which is more terrifying in the comments, and thanks for watching. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't yet, and we'll see you soon for more awesome videos from the channel.